Thank you, Sarah. And as she said, thanks everybody for taking a little bit of time out of your day to join us. As mentioned, my role in the company is the Director of Building Lifecycle Solutions. So I get to work with all the folks that really do anything as it's related to building design, construction, facilities management. We've got a whole team that works with each of those different crews as needed through there. But when we turn around and take a look at the presentation we've got here, it's how do we deal with things when we don't have separate silos for each of those things, for design, for construction, for facilities? What can we do to have just that one platform throughout? Now, while I'll be doing some intros through here, the guy that's really got the brains and taking us through the details of how all this happens is Scott Berg. Scott, anything else you want to throw in yourself for an intro?
No, other than I focus, of course, on the Autodesk Construction Cloud side of things here, and been with IMAGINiT, coming up on 20 years now, and so I have lots of experience both on the design, engineering, and construction world. So I have a good window into all of those areas of the construction process.
Awesome. So then, if we go to the next slide, just for the typical overview of really what are we here to do, the agenda we've got. I'm going to take a little bit of time up front and head through the part of framing the problem, defining the problem. Why does all this stuff matter? And setting a background for things. Then I'll turn it over to Scott, and he'll go ahead and take it from here's what that foundational problem is that we can solve, frame out what that solution looks like, and how do we calculate the value of going through that particular set of steps for a single platform from design through construction. So getting into it then, the overall problem. If we think about the things that are out there, it's probably nothing much that you haven't already experienced or don't already know. So hopefully a lot of what I'll be talking through here is just going to be affirming what's already understood. And if not, then hey, here's some extra little nuggets of information as we're going along. And the idea behind this being a data-driven problem is real. If we look at this, the idea of data loss, we got this from a survey that came through and was saying, what's it look like? Where does the data loss come from? And there's nothing that from the IMAGINiT side that we can really do for natural disasters. That 3% that's sitting there. There's human intervention and things along those lines that we can do to help start to address what we've got for, we'll say, computer viruses and the social engineering for people hacking away at things, stuff there. But where we're looking to say is where can we have an impact on things that really matter, on things that we can have a little bit of control on? Well, it's certainly going to be the human error side of things. And then depending on how we've got stuff going on, we can have a little bit of influence on software and corruption. We can have a little bit of influence, depending on how your environment is today, on hardware and system malfunctions. There's, depending on, again, big bold italics underline says, depending on the type of environment you're running in today, there can be certainly some stability and reliability improvements that can come around if we're looking at going through one platform throughout the life cycle of a project, as opposed to siloing everything off into different areas. So it's a lot of potential improvement that we've got. The other way that we can see things up on the next slide is, again, probably a slide in some fashion or another that you've seen of data loss that happens when we go between the different stages. So Scott, if you could go forward, please. I'm saying here it's nothing new under the sun, right? It's things that we know of that we've been talking about for a long time, and it's real. There is wasted time and effort, if you want to call it that, or the required investment, the cost of doing business when you're in a traditional design bid build standpoint, we'll say, of you're taking on this set of documentation that somebody else put together, and now you've got to interpret and absorb all these different things. The idea is we want to have something a little bit more continuous. I don't think that line for the goal is necessarily completely realistic unless you're a single entity taking everything from soup to nuts. If that's the case, then yeah, we've got some chances to really achieve that goal. But anytime there's some sort of handoff, even if we're in this environment that we're talking about of a single platform from beginning to end, there's going to be little bumps in the road along the way. What we want to do is minimize that so that we can improve and gain the most possible positive benefit from everything that's out there. So yeah, it's data. There's places where we can have influence, there's places where we can't. But in addition to data, if you hop over to the next slide, there's a bunch of other things that still are in play. As Scott is talking to customers, as I'm talking to customers, we're continually hearing over and over again that these things here, margins, uncertainty, siloed information, you name it, are still prevalent in our industry. It probably don't get that. A week doesn't go by where somebody's talking about something along these lines. We've got, I would say, uncertain economic times are facing us in different places. Yet, as I'm talking to customers, everybody's still struggling to get work done with staff they have, trying to figure out how they can find additional people to bring on to help ease that workload. There's a lot that's happening through there. And we're traditionally working with super low margins. So anything we can do to get a fraction of a percent into any different piece through here, that's going to be beneficial. And if we can do that by having this unified platform from beginning to end, then we're all good. Now, I mentioned that in the context of a design bid build project. Overall, I would say that that's still, from what I see, going to be the most prevalent method of construction delivery, of building lifecycle, construction lifecycle delivery. That's still there. But everything we're talking about here is really independent of any of those delivery methods. So, flipping on to the next slide, whether we're in design bid build, which we'll focus on because it's most common still, or if you're getting into design build, CM at risk, IPD, you name it. All of these delivery methods have similar problems. And we need to look to try and resolve them, because if it's a data issue, it's a data issue independent of the specific steps that you're taking from design through construction and facilities management. It's still data. So we need to be able to focus on a bigger picture that it can apply to any project that you take on, no matter how it gets structured. So what's that come to? That's the part where hopefully this was nothing that was anything new. It's like, yep, I get it. Maybe something a little bit different of haven't thought about it in terms of one solution that applies to all sorts of different delivery methods versus just where you are today at that moment. But we can take it to the next step. And if we're thinking, okay, so now what? There's, going back to what I was saying before, there's still really nothing new under the sun. Just a nice little phrase through there. So actually, Scott, if you hop forward 2 slides through here, I was looking back through some things, and back in 2012, I was giving a presentation on a lot of similar types of things that we have here. It was a combination of remote work and how do we work with a single source of truth and things like that. So this is a decade, more than a decade, that we're looking at from different presentations of trying to address this problem that we've got, this data problem. And at the time, it's still true now. There's really 2 different types of ways that we can treat data problems with single platform, source of truth, soup to nuts, all that stuff. One is you go to a cloud-based platform where you have all of your users with their various workstations, and you bring the data to those users wherever they happen to be through cloud services. The other thing is you host everything internally on your own data center and use some combination of remote desktops to bring everybody into that central location. Over the last decade, generally speaking, solution number 1 has ended up being the one to win out. People are much more interested in offloading their IT environment to something like Amazon or Azure or something like that, Autodesk Cloud, as opposed to trying to build up the server and IT infrastructure and managing VPNs and trust relationships and all that sort of stuff for going a full remote desktop solution for the entire project team to be able to access things from one place. But it is still there. It is still data. And so if we start with that data and we acknowledge that we're going to use one of these two things to be able to bring everybody together so that we are looking at that idea of a single source of truth, the next thing we've got to figure out is what in here matters. What are your priorities? So if you go over to the next slide, there's a few things here. We've just got a slide deck that steps up with a couple different things through here. We've got, what's important? Is it design quality? Is that going to be a key feature of what you're looking to do? It's like, we're good with design quality. We need to worry about profit margins. Is that something you need to work? Do we need to provide additional value to the owners and the customers that you're working with? Do we need to worry about safety, job site safety, as we're going through and looking at things? Do you just need overall reducing risk? We're just looking at the outlook of XYZ and your business, and risk is the biggest thing. Or if we go to what is, probably to some extent realistic, is I want to make sure that if something's coming around, I can make sure I'm assigning the blame to that other person, not to me. I've got a CYA as we're going through all this stuff. Do I want to go through and make sure that, we want to deflect, deny responsibility for things and say, nope, that's somebody else's thing? You could say that's a way of reducing risk. I would say also that if we're looking at assigning blame, deflect, and deny, those types of things are not really what we want to be focusing on. So let's go ahead and knock those two out of consideration and instead take a look at priorities that are going to be a little bit more realistic of taking a peek in at design quality. We want to make sure we have either maintain or improve that quality. If we're going to make a change, we need to try and make sure that it's a profitable change so we can maybe increase a little bit on some of those razor thin margins that we've got. Value to owner helps with repeat business, so that's good for business. Safety is always a good item, whether you're wanting to go with the different buzz phrases that are out there of safety first or safety second, depending on the different people or groups that you might follow. But we do that. But if you go ahead and click again, let's just make sure we're not taking this as a platform to say, I want to be able to lay the hammer down on other people. Let's collaborate better. There is a piece where we need to be able to trust a little bit as we're going along, but let's collaborate better. And if we can collaborate better throughout the life cycle of design and construction, all the better. Now, one example of this that's not specifically construction related, but it does give an example of what's possible. This was a couple months ago now, but on the next slide, it's just a screen cap from a presentation that Tesla had a little while back. In that, sorry, I was ahead of myself a little bit, focusing in on the collaboration type items. Everything that we had on the previous slide, single source of truth, standardization, digitalization, and making it all work. We want to connect all of these workflows to make it happen. One of the ways for that, now getting back to where I was the idea of being vertically integrated. One of the things that Tesla was promoting with this and how their business was running, what they were doing with things, is they were getting themselves to be vertically integrated instead of having an army of suppliers doing independent things for them and outsourcing work here, there, or everywhere. They were focused and have been focused over internalizing as much of these things as possible. Now, I am not suggesting that those in the construction industry need to grow and expand so that you are a one-stop shop with design, finance services, construction services. You're doing all things internally. You're not outsourcing any work to subcontractors, and then you're managing the facility going forward. Yeah, if that's your business model, cool, good for you, go for it. I'm not suggesting that we change your concept of business. What I am saying, though, is that if we can take these independent entities, architect, engineer, contractor, subcontractor, owner, and get everybody working in a single environment, we can begin to emulate this idea of stacking, of verticalizing our processes. In the case of Tesla, they were able to reduce costs of what they're doing for batteries and power and things related to their cars by They're anticipating up to 50%, 56%. I don't know that we'll get to that realm as well, but it provides a path, an idea, concept that we can look to follow. So if we're going to do that, and this is kind of wrapping up my part here where we can get into what is that solution that we're at. I would imagine you already have an idea of what we're talking about through here, but the integrated solution that we have needs to address all of these different items. So on the next slide, this is the idea of what we've got in the broad concept of what we want to call the Autodesk Construction Cloud, but it's a whole host of different elements and components of what we do in design, construction, and management of a building. Whether it's the collaboration tools that we've got in BIM Collaborate Pro, quantification tools inside Takeoff or things like ProEst, construction-related tools, cost management, taking everything through project closeout, maybe even going into the idea of the digital twin, taking it into tandem when we're done. That's not even listed here as a possibility. Just who knows what we need to go to and what your end user of all this data is going to do, but it's there. The reality is we've got the things available to us today to have that unified platform. So let's do it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Scott Burke to walk through the steps of how does this work? In this case, design, bid, build example.
All right, thank you, Joe. So you can hear me fine too. I just want to make sure of that.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, so again, we're talking about having a single platform here. So that's kind of been maybe a holy grail, right? That instead of having all these separate silos, let's have just one common data location where we can start our projects from the earliest beginnings and pretty much carry it through right to handover. And that really is where the Autodesk Construction Cloud comes into play here and so on there. So there are some questions that, when we're going to move to a solution like this is who's going to host it? Who manages the main collaboration site? It has to be consistent and an authoritative member of the team, someone who has the ability to make decisions and decide where things go. Is this going to be an owner? Is this going to be the architect who represents the owner, the engineer, construction management firm, whatever? So these are kind of those first questions that you really have to ask. And then once you've kind of decided, where is this stuff going to be hosted, or which entity, I should say, is going to take the lead. And then they can, of course, start the project and start inviting people in. And what the Autodesk Construction Cloud is becoming, and has mostly already become that, is a unified platform for AEC project delivery. Everything from that earliest conceptual design stage through planning, through construction, and handover and almost to the operation side of things. So if we look at the kind of foundation of the construction cloud that Autodesk currently offers, Autodesk Docs is really the foundation tool for everything that can be bought by itself. It's an amazing product in its own right. And then we can start moving to the other tools like Autodesk Collaborate Pro, or ABC Pro, as it's quite often called. A lot easier to say that. And ABC Pro brings to the table the collaboration, the project management. So I could be using Revit, Civil 3D, Plant 3D, AutoCAD, and have everything in one common data location. And we have that design collaboration, and we can control who sees the data and when. And then we get into model coordination, which is that clash coordination, or maybe a better term is clash avoidance at those early design stages where it's very cheap to make those changes and catch those problems. You don't want to catch a major HVAC element penetrating a beam after the building's mostly built, right? That would be a real problem. So this can help you plan to avoid those things. So these tools are really at their core about communication. When used properly, these tools can virtually, not completely, but drastically reduce phone calls, email conversations, and instead become a controlled environment for that communication, full of accountability and who's assigned to do what and so on. And that communication allows us to manage at the early stage design exchanges between the teams, track the milestones to make sure people are submitting their data at appropriate increments and so on, look at 2 and 3D changes very easily. And it's about, like I said, that communication. So there's a tool in the software called issues, right? And it's kind of a misnomer because it's not really an issue, it's more like an action item is a better term for that. And if I look at the entire Construction Cloud as a whole, and you just have to pick what tool is the most important tool in the entire Construction Cloud, really, I would almost have to say that it's the issue tool, and it's really, action items, because this is the major and the main communication tool within the product across all the products that are connected to each other. This is where I can quickly ask questions, assign tasks to people, get answers to quick things, have a paper trail of who answered it, when it was answered, if it's been answered, and so on. Most of the analytics in the software are actually based on the issues and their statuses and such. And again, I can place these issues on drawings, on files. They can just be general issues. They can be private and shared markups if I need that. I can create in the software review workflows. I can send transmittals and so on. So again, this ABC Pro and even Docs is all about the communication and collaboration. That's really what it is. And then of course we have coordination, clash detection, right? Clash avoidance is really what we're trying to do. We're trying to avoid the clashes, not create them, right? And again, we still use the issue tool to manage that these clashes are seen, that they're addressed, and so on. So really, if we're in a design, bid, build environment, there is a point where design is in one area and then it's handed over to the winner of the bid, right? So there is going to be kind of a handover, and there are tools within the software to help facilitate that. So even though we'll have 2 separate projects, they can be linked to each other. Bridged is the term that they use, and that's the name of the tool, to allow a more seamless data exchange, in this case, between the designer and the construction organization that has won the bid, right? So that's what I want to kind of start with here, is if we look at the Construction Cloud. So I've already logged in here. So this is my home page, and here are all my projects down here that I'm working on. So in a few seconds here, I can get into, all my projects. I can see everything that I'm working on. I can do a quick search, look for the project that I want to get to and work on. I also have a couple of areas here, my home page. So this is a relatively new tool and incredibly useful, especially if you personally are working on more than one project. I can now see all the projects that I'm working on geographically here. And I can see I have across all of these projects, there are 67 overdue issues that I personally am responsible for. There's 8 RFIs, there's 53 submittals, and so on. So across all the projects that I'm working on, so even though I have my own project and a general contractor may have their own project, but we're working together, I would still see issues that are assigned to me in their project and issues assigned to me in my current project, or things that are assigned to me that I need to deal with. So in a few seconds, I get this quick snapshot of all the things that I need to pay attention to right now. And also, if I use some of the other tools that are not yet fully integrated into the Construction Cloud, I can quickly get to, I still have some PlanGrid projects that I'm working with. I'm working with Building Connected, TradeTap, and actually AutoSpecs is now actually integrated, although I can still have a separate site for that is actually fully integrated into the Construction Cloud now. So down here, I can look for a project. There's the one I want to go to, and depending on what parts of the project I have things turned on for, I can jump right to the docs area right here of that project. So when you create a project, the first thing you actually do is you come in here and you invite people in. You just invite an email address in, you assign them a company that they work for, and you give them a role, a job function. What's your role on the project? Am I an architect, an HV engineer, BIM manager, construction manager, consultant? And you can create your own terms, whatever you need to suit your needs. And then in the project, instead of Autodesk telling you what these things do, you get to decide what a project manager does, what a construction manager does, what does an architect have access to, what does the engineer have access to. That's something you can define. So although it creates a little bit more work setting up project up, it gives you so much granular control over exactly what people can do within your environment, thus providing an extremely secure place to work. Now that first thing, and very simple here, when you start a project, it's really just a couple of files you have, right? And here we are, you create a folder structure. That's pretty straightforward. And then if you want someone to see a folder, you can go to that folder here and you can go to permissions right there. And you have explicit control over who can do what inside of these folders. Now, these are all my managers, so we have full access. But down here, I've given the architect view-only permissions to this folder so they can view the files. I can increase that to view and download, or view, download, and publish markups or edit rights. There's a lot of control here, and this could be templated, so you create a new project, all these settings are here, right? So that's a very important aspect here, is the ability to basically go in and template these things. Just bear with me for just a second. I can't get to a dialog box because it's under the controls. There we go. All right. So when I come in here, this is also, I look, and this is just docs. This is like the super viewer. I can view just about every well-known commercially accepted file type out there. So I could go into AutoCAD, of course, right? And I don't have AutoCAD yet. I could put an AutoCAD file up here and have full access to viewing the file, access to all the layers on that file without having any AutoCAD knowledge, right? Bear with me, there we go. And then I could go, hey, let's take a look at some format data. So we're using Format, which is Autodesk version of SketchUp. That's, again, far more integrated into their system. So now I have access to all that format data of a format project. I'm in my design development stage, conceptual design, whatever, and I'm putting all that information up in the cloud, doing that conceptual design, urban design. What will this building look like if it's in the site? Shadow studies, things like that, whatever. At the earliest design stage, I could put an inventor file in here, and now I have access to that inventor file. Don't have inventor, I don't have to know anything about inventor, I have access to it here. Or I could get down to MicroStation, right? Not an Autodesk product, open up the MicroStation file, have access to that. Again, going on down the line here, I could plant 3D photos, PDFs, of course, right? I can go into a PDF file and view that PDF. Right? And this is not using Acrobat, this is using Autodesk PDF Viewer that is optimized for these types of things. I could get on the SketchUp here and open up a SketchUp file. So if SketchUp is a tool you like to use, sure, go ahead, put it right up here and share that design with everyone on the team. And you control, again, who can view any of these file types. Again, it's the super viewer. It views just about everything that's out there. If you have it, it's probably a well-known product. It can be viewed in here. So this is not just for Autodesk products when it comes to sharing that data with other members. And again, certain formats such as AutoCAD, PDF, and Revit, I can actually do comparisons. So here's a PDF file, which is going to be your most common type, right? So I can come in here and put that Revit file, that PDF file here, and hey, I wonder what changed in version 1. So let's compare version 1 against version 3 because the version control is all automatic in the system. Let's compare it. This one single feature alone is worth the price of admission to me. The fact that I can just look at a file and instantly see all the changes. And if I want, I could go to a side-by-side mode, which is my more favorite one, the original document, and how has that changed? Really powerful tools here. I can also, when I'm in the file, I just want to look at version 1, just go to it, version 1. I am warned that it's not current, key important part of this tool, but yet I can see that I'm in an older version. I can go to version 2, look at that version, again, do the comparisons, and again, back to version 3. And this is true with all of the objects in this environment. You may not be able to do the comparison tool that I showed you. You can absolutely switch between versions at any time. I can click the version number and download a copy of one of the older versions and download it separately if I need it, and so on. And then if we look in here, if we look in this drawing, you see that there are markups and issues that I've added in here. The gray ones indicate that they're closed. This one over here indicates that it's open. It's a building code issue. That they didn't add some handicapped accessibility there. It was assigned to John Jones. So he's the person who needs to respond to this. When he sees this issue, he may update the drawing, come in here and say, hey, I've updated the drawing and I'll set this to completed. And then I get a notification that the issue I assigned to someone has been completed. I would come in here, review that the drawing has been updated, and then I could mark that issue as closed or reopen it if I wasn't happy with the solution or whatever. Again, you can mark things up. You have a whole set of markup tools right here. So you can go in the office and take every red pen and throw them out and keep everything here in a controlled environment. So you know where all your markups are, where all your issues are. You have permanent ability to track them. You can even export the PDFs out, including the markup. So you have a printed or a PDF record of the markups if that's something that you want to do. This is where I would just pick the different issue types. You can create your own types, but there's ones that are built into the software. You put your little issue indicator there on the drawing. Now right here, this is the issue management tool. And this is across the entire system from earliest conceptual stage all the way through construction if necessary. So again, this is my list of every single issue. And then I can come here and I could filter that. Will only show me issues that are related to a design issue, right? So I can come in here, show me design issues here, okay? And then only show me design issues that are maybe pending, right? Meaning that someone's answered them. And my job is to review the answered issues, of which there are now only 8. So you can see right here, someone said, add a door. Okay, well, where am I going to add that door? Oh, placement right here. Let's take a look at that. Takes me to the Revit model, takes me to the location in the file where someone said, add a door right there. And I saw that someone did add the door. They said we added it, updated the drawing. I see that it's there. And I can go ahead and I can mark that status that I confirm the door has been added to the plans, and I close it. And then I could actually come in and delete the markup because this is the updated version. The markup was created in version 2. So when I delete the version 3 markup confirming that it's been addressed, it leaves the version 2 markup in place, right? So now you can ensure that markups are actually being addressed. And again, this issue tool here is not so much a problem tracker. It could be just tasks. Like I said, I could assign someone, hey, I need you to do a punch list. I need you to make a change here. It's not a problem. I need you to add a door. It's not so much of an issue more than it's a request for me to do things, right? Completely up to you, fully reportable. Anything here that, you know, right there, I need a door right there. I can even export this as a report. And I can run that report. And all those reports that I run are actually stored over here. This is an important part of the tool where I can run these reports. This is my report log. I can create reports that are scheduled. I have this issue detail for overdue MEP issues that is sent out to the MEP engineer every Monday and Friday at 8 a.m. if there are any issues. If there are no issues, they of course want to get a report. But if they have overdue issues, they will get that mailed to them via email automatically. Right here, this is again my report log. I can download that report I just did. Open that up. I get a little image of where the issue is, the status of it. Any comments or anything on that issue will be listed here. The more information you put in, the more that will be in these reports. And as I said, these reports can be sent out to anyone there. So that issue tool, like I said, it's the major communication tool here. So back to files. So I'm going to work on my Revit models, whatever. So I go to files and I create places for my different contractors to work. So I have a place for my civil team to work, my own, I'm the architect, so I'm running the project, that's my folder. I have a folder for my MEP team and a folder for the structural team. And there's the structural model, I'm hosting it, they're storing their live model here. I can go ahead and I can basically look at the permissions again for this folder. Oh, actually I have to do it from over here, sorry about that. So obviously the managers have access, but what I've done here is the MEP engineer is the only one that has edit rights to this folder. The structural engineer, the civil engineer don't can't even see this folder. It doesn't exist as far as they're concerned, because this folder is reserved for that MEP engineer. That's the same for all my teams. Only the parties interested in that folder can see it and have permission to do things there. If I really move into the full design collaboration tool here, so as people are working on their Revit models, if I want to link a model in, it has to be distributed to me, right? So this tool is controlling the distribution of all the models and design iterations and milestone events. So from the architect's point of view right here, this was their first distribution, the 50% review. That was done on February 25th. Then they distributed their 75% one on, later on, here I meant to say, there we go. So that was done on March 31st, and then they had another released, 100% was released on the 5th of April there. So these are my distributions, and the ones up here that are solid are ones that I have accepted. The term that they use is I've consumed that. So I can see here that I consume the MEP engineer 50% review on the 30th. And then I consume the 75% review on the 31st, and so on. So I have a record here of all the milestones, all the distributions and milestone events that have been shared with the team. So we're not linking live models yet. That's what I consider worst possible practice. What you really want to be doing is, hey, I'm going to distribute a model that's ready for my other team members to use, and I distribute that. So this methodology, so let's take a look at the MEP engineer, right? So the MEP engineer has accepted all of the architectural ones, but you notice there's an empty circle here. So there's the structural engineer. They've accepted the 75%. This one's empty because the MEP engineer has chosen not to use this yet. So maybe this just came out. The MEP engineer got notified that the structural team has submitted their 100% design. Great. Let's take a look at it. Well, this is it right here. I can open it. I can see what they've distributed to me, and let's compare it to the previous version. So I'm going to compare version 2 against the current version 3, and see there's been 15 changes. Let's show the changes. Because this is Revit, we get even more information. It's in 3D. All right, so what is it that they removed? Let's take a look. Oh, well, they removed those 7 joists right there. All right, well, what did they add? Oh, I see what's going on here. They basically rotated the joist 90 degrees for whatever reason. Okay, that's fine. And what was modified? So I can pick this modified. Oh, that beam was modified. Well, let's pick that because I'm curious, what was that before it was modified? Let's find out. In version 2, it was a bar joist, and because they rotated the beams and is carrying more weight, they had to upgrade that beam to a W flange. So I didn't have to depend on the architect or the structural engineer to tell me anything. I was able to laser focus in a minute on exactly what changed. So now I know as an MEP engineer that I may have to reroute some of my HVAC information going through this area because the orientation of the beams changed, right? So now I have a lot of valuable information. I didn't have to call anyone. I didn't have to send an email to anyone. Again, a really powerful tool. Now, another new and exciting feature that Autodesk has released is this ability now to, instead of having everything hosted here, one person can still be the main host, like this architect here. But when we look at the same page, we'll notice that it's a little different. And I'm incredibly impressed with this. External team, the MEP team has their own site. And what they're doing is they don't host their live model on my site. They keep it in their own project, and they bridge their project into this so that they can participate in that consumed shared package methodology, but still have 100% control of their IP. This is huge. This is what everyone wanted, right? Is we have a central project still, but each consultant still has their own control entirely of their own IP, and they only distribute the packages, the models that are ready to share are the only things that they're actually sharing. So all that set up here, I just say, hey, I need to bridge with a project. This is bridged with my MEP project, done. They'll see the teams, I invite them into my hub and everything in the same way, but their model actually lives in their own environment, and they're only sharing the packages with me, not the live model. This is a huge jump. I was really impressed with the 24 release of Revit 24, and 23.1 also supports this, which is nice. So definitely a huge jump forward in here to make sure that people still have control of that IP. And again, we can jump right into model coordination. So I'm in the project, I have all the models in a certain folder, and I'm using those for clash coordination. I can go right here to my clashes. I have my clash matrix. Oops, make sure I'm in the right place there. Bear with me. I'm gonna go into the right project here. There we go. And we'll go into model coordination. Here are all my clashes. I get my clash matrix with all the models I'm clashing with. Let's go to some views I've set up. HVAC versus structure. Here are the clashes, and this just updates every time I publish a new model, the clashing updates. And I can come in here and I can identify all the clashes in just a few minutes. There's a clash right there. I want to make sure that that gets resolved. All I have to do here is come in here and basically create an issue. So I create an issue, place it on that object right there, takes a snapshot of everything here, and then I can basically attach that and assign it to someone. So directly actually in the clashing right here, I can identify, the object that has that clash right here, create an issue, and I'm going to put my issue marker right there. Creates the issue, reads data from this model, pulls the ID, the Revit ID numbers from it right there so I can find the things. And in fact, if I open up my MEP model, if that's where this is, I can actually find this 3D issue in the model itself, in Revit, and address it. And down here, it's even gone and made a screen cap. This is, now I can go in here and assign this issue to John Jones to fix that. And it's located, it's in the main building, and it's in, the plenum space and so on, and the due date is done by the 22nd. And all this has been sent to John Jones, and he's been assigned that issue. And again, if I look at issues here, this is just filtered to issues created in clash coordination. These are all clash coordination issues. I can pick any one of these, and it will take me to that actual issue like so. And get on over here, find another one. So now I can quickly jump to all these clashes and make sure that they're being addressed and completed, right? All right. Oops, jump to this one. So at a certain point, of course, you're done with that. You would hand this over to a contractor. You can use Bridge to share your design PDFs with that contractor who wins the bid. Again, if we're looking back in here at the very end there, we'll go into docs, we'll jump over here to my folders, and I have bid documents, right? And here's my bid package that I invite my bidders to view and download, and then I give each of those bidders their own folder. And that's where they're going to upload their bid, and I can watch the folder. You go to more here and say, subscribe to the folder and be notified when this changes. So when someone uploads a bid, I get an email notice that bidder 1 has uploaded a file, bidder 2 uploads the file. We compare the bids. We then, of course, award that to someone. And then I take maybe the design documents, whatever they are. So let's just say this design model is the final model. And I can bridge this folder. I can just take the folder right here. So I'll say, hey, I want to share the architectural, the MEP, and structural and civil with the general contractor. Great. Share, bridge with another project, turn on automation so that way there are changes, pick the contractor's project, and automatically synchronize my files with that folder, with that project. And we've kind of had that handover, 2 different projects, but connected to each other. So obviously, if we go to design build though, that's really where this is going to shine, because we're going to have that true central source of truth. Now we still have that same question, who's going to manage this? Is it going to be the general contractor who is going to manage this? Is it the owner, some other legal entity? We're seeing this a lot, especially with developers, where the developer will own the site, require and invite the GC to work in their environment. I've seen this with large airports where the airport owns the site, and in order to bid on a job, it's understood that they will host it and you will work in their environment. In other cases, you're the owner's rep, you're a general contractor. Of course, you're the one who's going to run the site and invite everyone into it and invite all the subs in and so on. So that those are still the same questions you have to ask yourself. So design build though is really that single project from, my spelling here, from design over to handover. So that's of course going to be design and BIM Collaborate Pro, markups, issues. You keep building the data. There's no handover process really, right? Ongoing, you go into quantity takeoff to start your estimating process and figure out the quantities of everything directly from the models or the 2D drawings. You control your packages for release construction. As there are design changes, they can be released instantly and pushed to the sheets for the team. Revit and CAD documents can be updated and then easily pushed into the construction process. And again, it's that seamless transition from design into planning and construction. Basically, no data loss, a true single source of truth. So one of the tools in Autodesk, of course, is Autodesk Takeoff, right? This is where your planning stage, your quantification. This would have also been used in design build. The contractor may have this. They get that information from you as a designer, and then they do their QTO on that. They figure out their costs, they build in their bids, and they bid for it. Or if you're a design build, you use this to figure out what the quantities are and start planning all that out. And Autodesk Takeoff here is all about 2D and 3D takeoff. It is not about cost estimating. It's about quantifying everything that you then bring into the cost estimating tool of your choice, right? But it's a comprehensive takeoff solution. It's 2D takeoff, it's 3D takeoff, and of course, document management using, of course, the Autodesk Docs environment there. Autodesk Build, of course, is that construction side. Document management, cost management, project management, quality control, safety, and project closeout are all tools and utilities built into this one platform. So we have RFI management, submittals, meeting minutes, daily reports, forms, quality, punch lists, issue management, safety management, training, observations, meetings, planning, connected cost management, budget creation and contract administration, change orders, cost forecasting, payment applications. We have Insight, the ability to analyze everything using reporting as one of the things I showed you there as part of this. And simplified project closeout, because we have all this data in one place, we can easily pull everything out in just a few clicks and hand that over to our client. So really, when we have design build, we're moving from design and then handover to build to just one environment, creating, again, that holy grail of the single source of truth, everything from early stages design, planning, building, operation. So I'm in the project here, design build, we just go ahead over to takeoff. Now I'm going to take those models, I import them in, and then I create my packages here. So maybe I want to have an interior package, right? So I have my interior walls right here, exterior wall. Let's go over here to sheets and models, and let me go ahead. Actually, I'll go to packages first. And we can pick the package I want to take a look at. So I'll go to my exterior walls, because that's where I'm going to start here. All right, and I'll go down to my 3D model, because I'm going to derive this from 3D information, right? So these colors we see are items that are part of different packages. So if I go down here and see my exterior walls are this color, I can turn that off. They're done. So I can, everything that I've already accounted for, I can turn off the visibility for. So everything that's left has yet to be done, right? I haven't finished taking all those things, but I've got all the exterior stuff done, and I could turn those back on right here to see everything that I've taken off. I can look at this exterior brick wall, and this brick wall is actually made up of, I have 500 linear feet of 6-inch metal stubs. I have 12,000 square feet of vapor barrier, 389 sheets of gypsum wallboard, and so on here. 70,000 bricks that we're using in this project, which is fairly large there. So all of that's been quantified. All I had to do was pick the wall. I built all these formulas in. I said, hey, well, right here for vapor barrier, that's a square footage. That's easy. For gypsum wallboard, I put area divided by 32 square feet for each panel. So I build my formulas in. I can save all this. So when I do future projects, the stuff's right already here. I can have all this stuff pre-built out and reuse it on other projects. Once I get all of this, here's the final inventory down here. So this is what this is about quantification. Here's the exterior walls. There's 45 instances of the walls, and then all the totals are right here. And then I export this out into Excel and bring it into, you know, Sage or whatever tool I'm using for the actual cost estimating. So that's where this comes into play. Now I can do this for both 2D, I can do this for 3D, where on a 3D plan, I just draw lines and that's the wall, right? Real simple. Again, excuse me, moving on here. Now we've won the bid, we're starting construction. I have all my sheets right here. I have my home page, there's my project progress, work status, all those things I need to pay attention to. We have my sheets, these are my construction documents, works very similar to what I already showed you, where we have markups, we have issues, I can compare the sheets against each other, but what we're looking at are the construction documents, and if I need to look at an older version, I can. And the key here is, although I'm doing the setup here in the PC, almost all of this is really done in the field on a tablet or your phone. This is a specific app for doing all this work out in the field. Here's all my files. This is your non-design documents, specifications, cut sheets, whatever. Same issue tool, right? Again, single source of truth. I have all my design issues, my takeoff issues, my construction issues, all in one place, filtered any way that I want. We have forms we can fill out. So I can either use the PDF forms I've always been using, or we can build smart forms like this one. So we look at an in-progress finished carpentry form here. And I go through, and this would, of course, be done on the iPad here. If there's an issue, it's smart enough to go, oh, if I actually mark no, an issue is required. There's conditional responses here. If I go back and, oh, yeah, I have a certain PDF form that doesn't translate to Q&A, so I can do a safety inspection form. There's today's weather, and here's my safety checklist, and I can start, you know, filling that form out. This one right here has already been closed, so let's look at a safety form that might still be open right here. This one is in progress, so, and I can start going through and start marking up my PDF form, and again, this looks a lot better when you're on a tablet. This is just a standard PDF form I've always used. You can build in signatures in here. I could sign off on these things. I could delete the signatures. I could mark it up, whatever. So I can, and then submit the form. Any form that's been submitted goes to a manager, and the manager then has to decide, does that form need to be, basically, this one's in review, this one's closed, this one's in review. I can go in here, and let me close that. There you go. And I can go ahead and sign and submit the form, meaning I'm the approver of it. Here are all the project photos we've taken. Every photo we've taken in this project. Show me all the photos that are referenced from issues. Here all they are. Here's my RFI process. That RFIs are like issues, except RFIs have a process, right? It's been submitted, has to be reviewed, and then it has to be answered by a manager. Same with submittals. I invite my whoever needs to submit a submittal. This one is waiting, so I'm waiting for this contractor to submit it. It will then go into review, and it'll be 2 review steps, and then it will be approved and or marked up. If I look at completed submittals here, there's a closed submittal right there. There's the shop drawing. I can open it. I can see that that shop drawing has been stamped by 2 different people. There was just a markup there, but it is approved, and that's the approved submittal document. I can track
Scott,
all my meetings. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you here, but since we're running close to the end of time, what we might look to do is hop over to some of the pitfalls that we've got through here.
Absolutely.
We haven't had too many questions come through in the Q&A pane, so if anybody's got something on your mind with anything that I've said, or more importantly, with what Scott's gone through, go ahead and please type those in as he's going through some of the pitfalls and wrap up here.
Right. So in summary, correspondence, scheduling, assets, reports, all of that is all manageable from here. And again, handover, there's my as-built report. It'll export everything in a single download for my team, right? So again, single source of truth, all that information's there. Now, there's still going to be potential pitfalls here. You know, you must have at least a minimal amount of trust and willingness to work together, okay? You know, there are people who are going to say, hey, I want to work on my own environment. It's just easier. I don't like not being in control. And those are things we'll need to overcome. And it's becoming less of an issue. This was more of an issue 10 years ago. It seems to be less so much now. And if you're not the owner of the site and you need to add a new consultant, so maybe you're the general contractor working for an owner, how hard is it to get them to add more people into the environment? And that is becoming easier, but these are considerations and potential issues that you have to deal with and think about. And these are questions I've come up with, come up against with my clients. And of course, why do we want to make this transition? Ultimately, it's about saving time, increasing productivity, accountability is really part of it too. Again, according to McKinsey Construction, productivity has only grown 1% per year in the past 20 years in the construction world. And it's lagging behind the other industries that are more on average of a 2.8% increase in productivity, right? And again, by implementing a cloud-based solution here, you don't have to keep going back and forth to the site, to the job site trail, waiting for revisions to get distributed. It's all instantaneous because it's distributed digitally. And activities can be tracked real time. I mean, I can be on a job site, go to the schedule and say 100% complete. We just finished installing the HVAC VAV boxes and so on, and that could be put right into the system. So calculate your ROI. So again, at the end of that project, you do your first project in a new system. How much money and time did we save? What do people like about it? What do they not like about it? What could you do better next time? You're always improving no matter what system you're using. And if you find problems with the system or feedback, get those back to the developers so that they can take a look at that and improve the system. Autodesk, because this is cloud-based, every 2 months, there's a whole new set of tools, most of them based on the feedback from the people using this. So this system is constantly evolving, and it's really dependent upon people who are using it providing the feedback, and that's probably the best advice I can give right now. And again, finally here, don't do it alone. We're all smart people. We can all figure this stuff out, but it takes time. That's where IMAGINiT comes into play. We've gone through the pain. We've analyzed it. We look for the best practices and the shortcuts to get you to the most productivity as fast as you can. That's really where we come into play. So we can take what might take you a year to do and reduce it to maybe weeks or just a month or two. So again, don't do that alone. And that's where IMAGINiT can help you accelerate the adoption of this type of technology. And with that, with a few minutes, we can open that up for any Q&A.
So there's a few questions that I was addressing along the lines as we were going along, but there's two here that I'd like to direct toward you, Scott. The first one here is an RFI a form of submittal? And maybe more from a technical standpoint, because I think the RFI and submittal, they are two different documents, but as far as how it gets worked inside the Autodesk build environment, could it be kind of like a submittal? I'm thinking no.
I mean, it can be. It depends on what you want, right? Every construction firm that I have worked with has distinct RFI and submittal processes. RFIs are usually a question for an engineer that requires a formal response. So when I look at an RFI, it's a question that requires a formal response. A submittal is, hey, I need to submit for shop drawing review. I need to submit for data sheet, or I need a submittal for the type of windows we're going to use. I need the information for them. If you just want to use RFIs for some of that stuff, you absolutely can, right? But it's not a requirement. Oops, back out there.
Gotcha.
There we go.
Okay. And then the other question we've got in the queue here is, it's kind of pertinent recently, but what backups do you have in place for when ACC goes down, when it's either, in this case, there was a recent event where the Amazon Web Services, which ACC is built on top of, had some issues, which affected a whole lot more than just Autodesk Construction Cloud. But what options do we have?
So again, as I mentioned before, most of this is really done on the tablet. You do the setup and management here. If there's a brief outage, which most of the time when Autodesk does have an outage, it's brief, it's an hour. You may not have access to the, what do you call it there, the web-based area, but people in the field, nothing really stops there. They just keep working because the tablet has already synchronized all the data locally, right? And that's what's going on there. So in the field, they're just continuing business as normal. They wouldn't even know that the system had gone down because unless they actively need to update something. So as long as they have all the information downloaded to the tablet out in the field, it's business as usual. Yeah, there's a hiccup in the office because you can't connect or something's down, but the data is not going anywhere. It will be back, right? So there might be
And
a
then you
pause, but you're
synchronize
not
and
going
move
to
on.
lose anything. Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
awesome. Well, with that, we are just past the top of the hour. I want to say thank you very much to everybody who took time out of your day to be here. And if you
Thank
have
you.
any questions whatsoever, please do reach out to IMAGINiT. We're happy to extend this conversation to whatever's on your mind. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week.